The NES had some of the greatest video games of all time. And today I'll be ranking my top 10 favorite NES games. At number 10, we have Metroid. Metroid is an action-adventure game released in 1986 where you play as Samus, a bounty hunter hired by the Galaxy Federal Police to take down Metroids and destroy Mother Brain. One thing I always loved about Metroid was how non-linear it was. Unlike most NES games, you didn't just move from left to right. You had to explore, backtrack, and use different abilities to unlock new areas. For example, once you gain the ability to plant bombs while rolling, you realize you have to go back to an earlier part of the map and blow up the floor to advance in the game. This game was also very creative and challenging. The final boss, Mother Brain, was one of the most iconic final bosses of its time as well. And of course, Metroid's big twist when Samus removes her armor at the end, revealing she's actually a female character. For these reasons, Metroid is easily one of the best NES games of all time. At number 9, we have Marble Madness. Technically, Marble Madness was an arcade game first, but I played it a ton on the NES. At first glance, the game looks simple. Guide a marble through an obstacle course as quickly as possible. Level 1 is pretty straightforward, just get to the finish line as fast as you can. By level 2, things get a bit more tricky. You have to avoid the annoying black marble that tries to knock you off the course, and then there's the curved ice path you need to navigate at the end of the level. As you progress, the game throws even more at you. Hammers, suction worms, acid pools, vacuum cleaners, and more. Then there's the silly race where everything you know is wrong, and finally the ultimate race where you deal with a mix of all the different obstacles, finishing with a maze that shifts as you progress. The only downside is that Marble Madness is a bit short. Once you get good, you can beat it pretty quickly, but the replayability is amazing. Some of the most fun I've ever had gaming was playing against friends, seeing who could finish with the most time left, fall off the least, or dominate the top score list. At number 8, we have Kung Fu. Kung Fu came out in 1985 and was one of the first NES games ever released. You play as Thomas, a kung fu master on a mission to save his girlfriend Sylvia, who's been kidnapped by Mr. X. To rescue her, you have to fight through 5 floors of enemies, each ending with a mini-boss before finally facing Mr. X, who just so happens to look just like Johnny from The Karate Kid. The gameplay is simple but fun. You'll use a mix of high and low kicks and punches to take down waves of enemies, and that's just exactly why this game works. No overcomplication, just pure, fast-paced martial arts action. This was one of the first NES games I ever played, and I had an absolute blast with it. At number 7, we have Contra. Released in 1988, Contra was one of the first truly great couch co-op games on the NES. You and a friend play as Bill and Lance, 2 commandos from the Earth Marine Corps Contra unit, fighting to take down the Red Falcon organization before they wipe out humanity. And that's what made Contra amazing. It wasn't just about beating the game, it was about beating it as a team. Plus, the weapon upgrades were next level. You could grab lasers, fireballs, rapid shots, machine guns, and my personal favorite, the spread gun. And of course, who can forget the classic Konami cheat code, up, up, down, down, left, right, BA start, giving you 30 extra lives at the beginning of the game. This game influenced a ton of run and gun games that came after, and is still one of the best NES games of all time. At number 6, we have Tecmo Bowl. Tecmo Bowl, released in 1987, was the first football game to feature real NFL players, and honestly, it's still one of the most fun sports games ever made. The gameplay is simple. You get 4 plays to choose from, and if the defense guesses your play, it's pretty much an automatic sack. I spent months mastering this game, learning every trick and strategy, causing countless rage quits from friends and family. My favorite player was Lawrence Taylor on the Giants. He was the fastest defender, and you could blitz him for easy sacks, or drop back and cover the entire field. You could also block almost any field goal or extra point with them. And then there's the classic Tecmo Bowl move of dropping back 30 plus yards with your quarterback, then launching a 70-yard bomb down the field. Or if you were playing as the Raiders, just running circles around defenders with Bo Jackson was great fun as well. What made Tecmo Bowl legendary was how every team had its own unique strength, making every matchup feel unique. Some of the most fun times were playing Tecmo Bowl tournaments with friends, and honestly, I still go back and play this game occasionally to this day. There's no question, Tecmo Bowl is one of the best NES games ever made. At number 5, we have Super Mario Bros. Super Mario Bros. Was released in 1985 and is one of the most iconic games in video game history. You play as Mario or Luigi in 2-player mode on a mission to rescue Princess Peach from Bowser. The game was simple yet revolutionary. You run, jump, and stomp enemies while navigating through different worlds with hidden warp zones, extra lives, and power-ups. One of my favorite things about this game was how smooth and precise the controls felt compared to other games at the time. Whether it was jumping across pits, shooting fireballs, or running full speed through a level without stopping, everything just felt great. And who could forget the turtle tipping? If you knew how to do it, you could get near infinite lives. Even after all these years, Super Mario Bros. Is still a blast to play, and it laid the foundation for one of the biggest gaming franchises of all time, and it absolutely deserves a spot on this list. At number 4, we have Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Was released in 1987, and it's easily one of the best sports games of all time. You play as Little Mac, an underdog boxer, working his way through the ranks to eventually take on the legendary Mike Tyson. Every fight in this game has unique mechanics. You have to learn your opponent's patterns, dodge at the right time, and counter when the opportunity arises. Fighters like Glass Joe, King Hippo, Bald Bull all had their own unique moves and weaknesses. And then there was Mike Tyson. If you ever faced Tyson back in the day, you know how insanely difficult he was. He could knock you out with a single punch in the first round, and you had to be absolutely perfect to stand a chance. This game was tough, but that's what made it so rewarding when you finally figured out each fight. The challenge, the characters, and the music, it all makes Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! One of the best NES games ever made. At number 3, we have Tecmo Super Bowl. If you love Tecmo Bowl, Tecmo Super Bowl took everything that made the first game great and took it to the next level. Released in 1991, this was the first football game to feature all 28 teams, complete season mode with stat tracking, and even player injuries. Unlike the first Tecmo Bowl, which had limited plays and no real season mode, Tecmo Super Bowl let you control an entire season, track your stats, and even make substitutions if a player got injured. One of the best things about this game was how every team played differently. Some teams had elite quarterbacks, some had dominant running backs, others had defenses that could shut you down. And of course, Bo Jackson was still unstoppable in this game. If you gave him the ball, you could run circles around defenders, break tackles, and score ridiculous touchdowns. Whether you were playing against a computer or friends in head-to-head matchup, Tecmo Super Bowl was one of the most fun and competitive sports games on the NES. It's an absolute classic and easily one of the greatest games ever made. At number 2, we have The Legend of Zelda. Released in 1986, The Legend of Zelda was one of the first open-world adventure games and completely changed the way games were designed. You play as Link on a quest to collect the pieces of the Triforce and defeat Ganon and rescue Princess Zelda. One of the best things about this game was how open it felt. Unlike a lot of NES games that were linear, The Legend of Zelda lets you explore at your own pace. You could go almost anywhere from the start, and it was up to you to figure out where to go next. The dungeons were incredible, each with their own unique enemies, puzzles, and boss fights. And finding new weapons like the boomerang, bombs, and the magical sword made Link feel stronger as you progress. This game also introduced one of the most legendary gaming soundtracks of all time. The overworld theme is still instantly recognizable today. And don't forget that iconic gold cartridge. The first time I saw it, I knew this game was going to be awesome, and The Legend of Zelda absolutely delivered on those expectations. From the open world to the memorable dungeons, The Legend of Zelda laid the foundation for one of the greatest franchises in gaming history. Before we get to the number one NES game of all time, I have to give a shout out to some honorable mentions, games that were awesome but just missed the top 10. First, we've got Castlevania. This game had you playing as a vampire hunter armed with a whip, taking on Dracula and his minions. Next, we have Double Dragon, one of the best couch co-op beat-em-ups ever made. You and a friend take on waves of bad guys in this one. We've also got Excite Bike. This game has dirt bikes, huge jumps, and the ability to design your own course. How could you not love it? Also, Bubble Bubble, one of the most creative, fun co-op games on the NES. You play as a little dinosaur that trap enemies in bubbles, pop them, and collect the fruit. Next is Final Fantasy, one of the greatest RPG franchises of all time. This was a groundbreaking RPG back in the day. And finally, Bionic Commando, one of the most unique NES games out there. Instead of jumping, you used a grappling hook to swing around the map and take down enemies. It was extremely fun and totally different from anything else that was out there. So that's it for the honorable mentions. Let's get to the number one best NES game of all time, and that is Super Mario Bros. 3. Released in 1990, Mario 3 took everything great about the original and made it even better. The level design was incredible. Each world had its own theme, from the Desert World 2 to the Giant World 4 and the extremely difficult World 8 Dark World. Then there were the power-ups, the super leaf that turned Mario into a raccoon, the frog suit for swimming, the tanuki suit that let you turn into a statue, and my personal favorite, the Hammer Brothers suit. One of my favorite things about Mario 3 was the hidden secrets. There were hidden warp whistles that let you skip worlds, treasure ships that appeared randomly, and countless hidden power-ups. And let's not forget the mini-bosses. Each world ended with an airship battle against one of Bowser's kids, leading up to the final fight against Bowser himself. This game was excellent, the controls were perfect, the levels were creative, and it was just fun from start to finish. Even today, Super Mario Bros. 3 is considered one of the greatest video games ever made. And in my opinion, it's hands down the best NES game of all time.